What happens when the President of United States warned Israeli Prime Minister that soon he can be on his own? The growing rift between United States President Donald Trump and Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu is now out in public. For decades, US and Israel have stood shoulder to shoulder, specifically as far as the Iran issue is concerned. That's why we have seen both countries coming together to wage war and attack against Iranian territory as well as the other proxies such as Hezbollah and Lebanon. However, the recent statement coming from President Trump's office point to the fact that rift between these two countries and leaders have growing in past couple of weeks as far as the Iran deal is concerned. So why Trump has issued a warning, stern warning that BB, be careful. And it means that very soon US could lose, Israel could lose support of United States if it goes on its own path or on its own way. Now let us try to understand this entire issue in more detail. Trump has warned Netanyahu against resumption of any kind of war. We have seen that after several weeks of continuous war between US and Iran, the ceasefire agreement was signed to some extent, and both countries have accepted that they would not attack each other's territory and assets. But we are seeing again Iran and Israel have exchanged missiles against each other territory, and that had put the ceasefire signed or ceasefire accepted by President Trump in jeopardy. So he has urged caution regarding future strike, and the main reason behind this, he believes, is because of his focus on preventing any kind of escalation in the West Asia or Middle Eastern region. He also has highlighted the limits of US patience as far as the war is concerned. Now, let us try to understand why there is a dispute over Israeli strikes. Trump has complained of short notice because Israeli strikes were already underway when President Trump was informed about this. Trump claimed he limited the operation. Obviously, he likes to take the credit for anything anywhere going on the world in the world, and that's why he stated that he was the one who limited the operation, and he fears that if Israel and Iran does not mend their ways, then soon there can be uncontrolled escalation in the region, and that would affect economic and geopolitical interest of America as well. Growing trust deficit is also being seen between allies. We have seen that Iran has taken a rather different approach this time and began attack all the West Asian countries, Gulf countries, who largely are traditional US partner, and that's why pressure on Trump can also be seen coming from these countries. Trump versus Netanyahu, if you look, Trump is more focused on pushing toward diplomatic settlement to end this war, while Netanyahu favors continued pressure in Iran. He even is willing to keep pressuring Iran by the launching strikes, military strikes, drone strikes, and such. So, kind of different approaches we are seeing being taken by both leaders as far as the regional security is concerned. This also has led to increase in policy disagreements between the nations and overall strain in the US-Israel coordination. Now, the biggest question comes is that why it is in the interest of Prime Minister Netanyahu that this war drags on. And the answer to this question can be found in the domestic political scenarios in Israel. We know that in Israel, parliamentary elections are approaching, and Netanyahu seems to be trailing in the opinion poll. That means there is a possibility that in the aftermath of elections, he might lose his prime ministership. He already is involved in various different proceedings in the court related to the allegations of bribery, corruption, and all. And it would make it difficult for him to control and manage this if he lose the highest office in the government in the country. So for him, war seems to be a political survival issue. If the war drags on, he thinks that his popularity will rise. He will present himself as the savior of Israeli people, Israeli population. He will present himself as the one who basically control the Iranian threat to a large extent and even permanently. And that's why he wants the war to drag on as far as possible, and at least till that extent when Iran is significantly weakened, that cannot pose any challenge to Israel in the future. Trump, on the other hand, seeks stability because again US midterm elections are approaching, and it is being felt that American people, due to the economic crisis emanating from this war, are not happy, because when Trump took charge of the American presidency, he promised to his people, he promised to his citizens that he is going to be the president of peace. But what we are seeing is basically he has turned into the president of war. So many experts argue that Trump is also losing popularity because of this dragged war. Leadership priorities thus seem to be increasingly diverged. It is in the political interest of Trump to stop this war as soon as possible, while it is in the political interest of Benjamin Netanyahu to drag this war as much as possible. Now, in last weekend, we have seen Israel and Iran have exchanged fire. They have exchanged missiles over the weekend, and this is significant because it's first major incident since the April ceasefire. So, almost 2 months after ceasefire, this kind of incident have taken place. Trump thus has urged Israel not to retaliate, even gave a stern warning that any such retaliation by Israel against Iran could lead to US losing or US basically withdrawing its support from Israel. Israel, however, has proceeded with response, and after that, Prime Minister issued a statement where he has stated that due to the strike carried out by Israel, now Iran is no longer willing to or no longer planning to attack Israel again, and that's why a temporary stand down seems to have followed after this incident. Trump also trying to convince Israeli Prime Minister that he should give diplomacy a chance, and that's why negotiations are continuing as far as the Iranian leadership is concerned. Avoid immediate military escalation. That is the direct message from President Trump, and he also has said that he is very confident that he would soon secure a deal as far as Iran is concerned. And also he gave warning to Iran. He said that if we are not able to come to an agreement, in that case, US itself would start carrying out a strike against the Iranian territory, Iranian regime, if it becomes necessary as such. But at the same time, he has emphasized that diplomacy first is going to be his way of dealing with this crisis. Now, US leverage and regional concern also are playing an important role here because, as we have seen, the major American partners in the Gulf region, such as we have Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, these countries have faced barrage of missiles from the Iranian territory. So, it is possible that they have requested restraint from Israeli side so that the war that has entered a ceasefire phase does not resume again. Supported ongoing negotiations, we are seeing a massive support coming from these countries, and they want, it is in their best economic interest that this war ends here itself. Otherwise, there is a fear of wider regional conflict. Till now, even when Iran has attacked all these Gulf countries, we have not seen a direct attack coming from these regions against Iranian territory. It is because these countries want diplomacy and want this situation to diffuse as peacefully as possible. So that's why they are favoring preservation of ceasefire in this regard. Netanyahu also have drawn a red line. Israel is temporarily holding fire, but in the press statement, he clearly has mentioned that future attacks by Iran would again trigger massive response from Israel. He has not even promised that Israel will carry out a strike, but he has said that Israel will carry out overwhelming strike and force if provoked again. Message was conveyed both to the Iranian leadership as well as to President Trump also. Deterrence remains central policy as far as Israel's stand against Iran is concerned. That's from this entire discussion. If you have to take some key takeaways, we can say that US, especially President Trump, are seeking negotiated settlement as far as the Iran crisis is concerned. Israel, on the other hand, has demanded strong deterrence measure. Iran remains a central challenge because nuclear issue is still far away from the solution point. Ceasefire, though from April we have seen ceasefire in effect, but it has been violated recently in the last weekend. And also the biggest challenges that US want and Iran want the entire ceasefire to be in effect both over the Iranian territory as well as over the Lebanese territory. On the other hand, Israel does not want to include Lebanon in the ceasefire agreement. It wants to keep it excluded so that it can keep on carrying out strikes, military strikes, drone strikes, and military strikes against the Lebanese territory as such. So, regional stability to a large extent depends on how diplomacy further progresses from now on. That would also determine the fate of the entire West Asia Gulf region and to some extent the economic fate of the entire world, which is engulfed in the energy crisis due to the West Asian crisis. That's all for this particular video. Thank you very much.